AI isn't eliminating work. It's changing what makes work valuable. And the gap between what used to be valuable and what's valuable now is widening so fast that most professionals haven't adjusted yet. Let me show you what I mean. 5 years ago, if you could execute complex tasks reliably, you were valuable. If you could take a set of requirements and produce a high-quality deliverable, you had job security. Execution was scarce. It required skill, experience, and judgment built over years. Today, that's being compressed. Not eliminated, compressed. I can now handle an increasing portion of execution work. Writing code, drafting documents, analyzing data, creating presentations, summarizing information. Tasks that used to require hours of skilled labor now take minutes with AI assistance. This doesn't mean those tasks disappeared. It means the economic value of doing them manually collapsed. Think about it this way. If a junior analyst used to spend 8 hours building a financial model, and AI can now generate a comparable model in 20 minutes, what happened to the value of that 8 hours? It didn't disappear, it just migrated. The value moved from the execution of building the model to the judgment of knowing what model to build, how to frame the question, what assumptions to test, and how to interpret the results. Execution became abundant. Judgment became scarce. And this shift is restructuring which skills command economic value in ways most people haven't internalized yet. Here's what this looks like in practice. A McKinsey study from 2023 analyzed how AI tools affected knowledge worker productivity across different task types. What they found was striking. For routine cognitive work, tasks with clear inputs and outputs, AI improved productivity by 60 to 80%. That sounds good until you realize what it actually means. It means the market value of doing that work manually just dropped by 60 to 80%. If AI can do in 1 hour what used to take 5, the person doing it manually is now competing against a much cheaper, faster alternative. Their skill is still real. It's just not scarce anymore. But for non-routine cognitive work, tasks requiring judgment, context, and decision-making under ambiguity, AI improved productivity by only 10 to 20%. It helped, but it didn't replace the human contribution. Which means the economic value didn't collapse. It might have even increased, because now the bottleneck isn't execution capacity. It's judgment capacity. This is creating a bifurcation in labor markets that most people aren't seeing clearly yet. On one side, execution-heavy roles are getting compressed. The work still exists, but it requires fewer people, less time, and commands less compensation. Organizations are realizing they don't need 3 analysts when AI plus 1 analyst can produce the same output. On the other side, judgment-heavy roles are compounding. The ability to frame problems, make decisions with incomplete information, understand context that AI can't access, navigate organizational politics, build relationships, those capabilities are becoming more valuable because they're the bottleneck now. If you're on the wrong side of this line, your career is being quietly devalued even if your performance reviews are still good. Let me make this concrete. Take 2 marketing professionals. Both have 10 years of experience. Both are considered strong performers. Person A spends most of their time executing, creating campaign assets, writing copy, building presentations, managing project timelines. They're good at it, reliable, efficient. Person B spends most of their time on judgment, deciding which campaigns to run, interpreting customer data to shape strategy, negotiating with partners, building relationships with executives, making calls on budget allocation. 3 years ago, both were valuable. Today, person A is becoming replaceable. Not because they're bad at execution, because AI can now do 70% of what they do, faster and cheaper. Person B is becoming more valuable, because the judgments they make, the context they bring, the relationships they navigate, those aren't things AI handles well. And as execution gets easier, the scarcity moves entirely to judgment. Here's where this gets uncomfortable for a lot of people. The work you spent years getting good at might be on the wrong side of this line. If your expertise is primarily in doing things, in executing tasks you've done many times before, that expertise is depreciating faster than you probably realize. Harvard Business School studied this in the context of software engineering. They found that experienced developers who built their careers on execution speed, writing clean code quickly in established frameworks, saw their relative value decline significantly with AI coding assistance. Not because they couldn't use the tools, because the tools commoditized the exact skill they'd spent a decade building. Meanwhile, developers who built their careers on architectural decisions, on understanding business context, on knowing when to build versus buy, on navigating technical debt trade-offs, their value increased. Because those are judgment calls that still require deep context AI doesn't have. This pattern is showing up across industries. Legal research that used to require junior associates working 60-hour weeks can now be done by AI in hours. But the judgment of which legal strategy to pursue, how to negotiate, how to read a room, that's still entirely human. Financial analysis that used to require teams of analysts can now be largely automated. But the judgment of which investments to make, which risks to take, how to structure deals, that requires context and intuition AI can't replicate. Content creation that used to require writers can now be generated by AI. But the judgment of what message will resonate, how to position a brand, what story to tell, that's still a human skill. The pattern is consistent. Execution is being compressed. Judgment is compounding. And if you're not actively shifting your work toward the judgment side of that line, you're being devalued whether you feel it yet or not. Here's what makes this particularly dangerous. Most performance management systems haven't caught up to this shift. You can still get good reviews for being excellent at execution. Your manager might still value your ability to reliably deliver high-quality work on deadline. But the economic reality underneath that is changing. The organization needs less of that work than they used to. And when budget pressure comes, roles that are execution-heavy are the ones that get cut or consolidated. Because the math change. If AI plus one person can do what used to require 3 people, organizations don't need 3 anymore. They need one, and that one needs to be good at the judgment parts, not just the execution parts. So what does this mean practically? First, audit what you actually do. Not what your job title says. What you spend your time on. If most of your time is spent on tasks with clear inputs and outputs, tasks you've done many times before, tasks that could be described in a detailed process document, you're in the danger zone. That doesn't mean you're going to lose your job tomorrow, but it means the economic value of what you do is eroding. And you need to be actively shifting toward work that's harder to automate. Second, understand that experience now cuts both ways. Experience in execution is depreciating. Experience in judgment is appreciating. If your 10 years of experience is primarily, I've done this task 1,000 times and I'm really fast at it, that's not the asset it used to be. AI is becoming fast too. But if your 10 years of experience is, I've seen these patterns before and I know which approach works in which context, that's still valuable. Because pattern recognition in ambiguous situations is something AI struggles with. Third, deliberately build skills on the judgment side of the line. That means getting involved in decisions, not just execution. It means understanding business context, not just technical requirements. It means learning to operate in ambiguity, to make calls with incomplete information, to navigate human dynamics. These are skills that were always valuable, but they used to be optional if you were excellent at execution. Now they're not optional, they're the only thing that keeps you on the valuable side of the line. Fourth, recognize that the transition period is now. This isn't something happening in 5 years. It's happening right now, unevenly across roles and industries. Some functions have already experienced this compression. Others are just starting to feel it. But the direction is clear, and waiting to adjust until you're directly impacted means you're adjusting from a position of weakness rather than strength. Here's the broader pattern. Every major technology shift changes what's scarce and what's abundant. Spreadsheets made calculation abundant. Suddenly being good at arithmetic wasn't valuable anymore. Being good at knowing what to calculate, that stayed valuable. The internet made information abundant. Suddenly knowing facts wasn't valuable anymore. Being good at synthesizing information, at separating signal from noise, that became valuable. AI is making execution abundant. Being good at doing things you've done before isn't going to be valuable much longer. Being good at deciding what to do, at operating in novel situations, at bringing judgment to ambiguity, that's what's becoming scarce. And scarcity is what determines economic value. Always has been, always will be. The professionals who navigate this well aren't necessarily smarter or harder working. They're the ones who see where scarcity is moving and position themselves accordingly. They stop optimizing for execution speed and start optimizing for judgment quality. They stop building expertise in doing tasks and start building expertise in making decisions. They stop measuring themselves by how much they get done and start measuring themselves by the quality of the calls they make. This is a fundamental reorientation of what professional work means. And it's happening whether you're ready for it or not. The question is whether you're on the right side of the line when the value migration completes. Because there's still time to shift. But that window is closing faster than most people realize.